tonight, and I hope you've enjoyed having me into your homes as much as I've enjoyed being there.
In the library tonight. I've been so worried and afraid. I just can't cope, Bill. Dr. Smedley.
Come now, Mr. Hollingsworth. It's useless to keep up this charade any longer. When you found out your wife was having an affair with Stud Sturley, the tennis pro...
I think that's what makes America the greatest nation on earth, don't you?
Rampart, this is Squad 33 1/3. Go ahead, Squad 33 1/3. This is Rampart. Rampart!
Said that in 2 weeks I'd be able to dance again, but...
You seized your opportunity to kill her. Get rid of the gardener with whom you had secretly been having a homosexual affair.
We're willing to open our doors to anyone, but Ivan Kamivanovich, who'd better watch out or he might just get his toe...
Nails embedded in my femur.
That and a good strong national defense will...
Have a man down at the corner of 93rd and 3rd.
By killing her with the hedge clippers.
Approximate age between 19 and 67. This is Rampart. Send vital signs. BHP 60/80.
You know.
Pulse rate 45/5.
How important that...
MPH 55.
Medicine is to...
Kilometers close to?
My future.
115.
Keep this nation #1.
And you are alibied by your twin brother...
In a dog-eat-dog world.
Who had...
Checked and cleared toe passages for possible jam. This is Rampart. Give patient 300 cc's of Demerol.
Damn it all. I won't allow you to prostitute yourself on the streets for me.
10-4, Rampart. 300 cc's of... Damn it all?
Demerol.
Oh.
Take your place in the nationally televised Mahjong tournament. You...
Check for malfunction of digit index and pinky discoloration.
So show your teeth, America.
Discoloration?
Sped down Old Lake Road, trying to get to the...
Negative.
Spot where you...
No, my medication is being held back because of what Jack did to the pharmacist and...
Knew Stud would be taking his morning swim.
Roll a THC and transport immediately.
In hopes of drowning him.
And don't forget church on Sunday.
But it was foggy that morning.
Possible tibula or circular.
And you...
No, Jack.
Killed your cousin Fritz by mistake.
My son, but my career is at stake.
10-4, Rampart.
It was the mud on your Ferrari's tires that gave you away.
And if Judy won't stand aside, I'll kill her.
With a bicuspid hydrocarbon during transport. And don't bogart that joint.
It's 11 o'clock. Do you know who your children are?
Book 'em, Dano.
A warm round of applause for Dana Charette, Stephen Rydell, Nancy Slick, and Sally Wiegold in a skit entitled Cable Television. It was written by the OKU's Theater Company. Good evening. My name is Ben Vereen, and I'd like to welcome you to our tribute to a wonderful humanitarian, a fine entertainer, and my close personal friend, Terry Doran. Now, okay, I'm not Ben Vereen. You knew that because I can't dance. My name's Mark Rosine, and I work for the city, and I am indeed a close personal friend of Terry Doran's. And what we're here for tonight is to roast the hell out of him. And I must say it gives me a great deal of personal pleasure to be hosting this roast for Terry because in my work for the city, I'm usually the roastee and not the roaster. In fact, when I came back to Fort Wayne from Indianapolis, where I formerly lived, I was greeted by a couple of editorials in the newspaper announcing my arrival, and they played pretty rough. And called my grandfather up on the telephone, told him about it, read him the editorials and things that they said about me, and he's about 90 years old, and he said, well, son, when you go to sit down to dinner with the wolves, you should probably find out ahead of time whether you should read the menu or whether you are the menu. Terry is our menu tonight, as you can see by our graphic. What we're going to do is a lot of Terry's old friends are going to be with us this evening who will be telling a little bit about themselves, a little bit about their experiences with Terry. Hopefully, I think we'll have a pretty good time. Incidentally, if you're wondering why they selected me for this particular task, when they came to me, I thought, well, it was because I'm so personable on television, or because I did such a wonderful job in the past Theater for Ideas, or because I've been such a loyal friend to TFI these many years. Forget it. I'm here because I look like Terry Doran. It's the only reason I'm up here. I want to see if we can tell us apart. And in fact, that's been a real problem for me because prior to coming back to Fort Wayne, I worked for a group called the Indiana Committee for the Humanities, the very people who gave Terry this grant. And I'd like to say that I had a little share in him getting the funds to do this program. But I remember when I first moved down there, once again, I ran into newspapers. They did, the Indiana Committee for the Humanities did a standard release and released my picture, and my picture was in the newspaper. And it was after 5, and I remember on the very first day of work, and I was the only one there. Phone rang, and I answered it. And there was a woman on the line. She said, "Can I speak to the guy who's running the Resource Center?" And I go, "Well, that's me." And she goes, "Oh, I am so glad that you're down here. I mean, it's just so important that you're here in Indianapolis and you can make a contribution, and the Indiana Committee for the Humanities really needs your help." And I'm feeling real good. This is my first day of work. She's going on and on with all the adjectives, and all of a sudden she starts to say, "And you know, the thing I'm most excited about is pretty soon Indianapolis will have Theater for Ideas. And I think you've done such a marvelous job with the Theater for Ideas, and the way you've handled controversy and fomented debate and discussion." And I started getting a little nervous. I said, Lady, wait a second. I'm not Terry Doran." And she goes, "Oh, you're not? Well, somebody's got to be." So before we go on with our roast, I would like to introduce you to Dinner at 9, our friend Terry Doran. Can we have a round of applause? Our first guest this evening is I think, relatively speaking, perhaps a fairly recent friend of Theater for Ideas, but certainly someone who has made a major contribution to keeping it on the cable, and that's John Brockman, the regional manager for Fort Wayne Cablevision in Fort Wayne. John?
You're correct, Mark. I am a new friend of Terry's, and Terry, if you could stand up, I'd like to tell you about my story with you in the box. You're the man that comes out of the box on Friday evenings and again once other time during the week. And as you saw tonight on the big screen, and as you folks saw at home, there's something very interesting about Terry. Come on over here, Terry. Something extremely interesting. Terry is not ambidextrous. He is not. If you'll notice, he always stands like this with the microphone in his right hand. In fact, tonight there were only 3 times during the last taping that he didn't have the microphone in his right hand. In fact, when I hand him the microphone, he will instinctively, put it in his right hand.
Which is right. Oh.
But when you're talking to somebody, Terry, like I am, you can move it to your left hand, or you can move it to your right hand, or move it back to your left hand. But you don't have to be locked into your right hand. In fact, for the rest of the evening, I want to see you hold that in your right hand. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. As you can see. In fact, there's another reason he doesn't use his left hand very often. I did notice it is dirty. Again, I'm John Brockman, General Manager for Fort Wayne Cablevision and Regional Manager for the 3-state area for Cox Cable of Indiana, Illinois, and Lower Michigan. What we've seen here tonight and in the last 39 weeks of TFI programs is cable television access programming by the Indiana Committee for the Humanities, funded by them, as well as by Fort Wayne Cablevision. But I have a challenge to all of you. Appropriately, Theater for Ideas series was entitled New Television for a New Decade. That's what we at Cox Cable also think, that cable television is television for a new decade. And access programming can be a significant part of that new television. Presently, it's a novelty. I think we all feel that way. Friends seeing you on TV, right there in your own home. A chance to explore a new idea that broadcast television over the air didn't have time for. But even now, that novelty is wearing off. And as the equipment gets scratched, as the dust starts to settle, even as this room starts to show the wear of all of us being here, the novelty may fade, but the idea of access absolutely must continue. It will only if access serves more needs. And that's why I'm here to roast Terry tonight, because he was the forerunner of serving more needs. The method of taking access to the people was a new idea, a new method. When the public library approached us, we thought that rather than access coming to our building, we take access to the public. Steve Fortrade, Mr. Vagler, Dr. Ashton of the library, a group called Cable Access, Inc., along with the City of Fort Wayne and Fort Wayne Cablevision, created this access method for the benefit of all the Fort Wayne Cablevision subscribers, all of you here tonight. And Terry was integral in that part because he plowed new ground, as he has done for several years. Now, in order for access to continue to grow, that novel idea must satisfy even more needs, and the more needs of all of those subscribers. Greater support is necessary. Don't let the novelty wear off, Terry. Increase both physical as well as financial resources. Access programming can serve even more needs, even in this tight economy. Access programming under Terry Doran has had an excellent start. Under the Allen County Public Library. It reflects the classic communications model. A listener, a speaker, a medium, and an idea. Access has a speaker. Terry Doran was the producer. It has a listener, the Fort Wayne Cablevision subscribers who even now are watching us. An idea, the need for the program. And lastly, the medium, the Fort Wayne cable system. Two are provided by us, Fort Wayne Cablevision, the medium and the subscribers. And two must be up to the community to provide, the producer and the needs served. So that's our challenge to Terry as to everyone listening. Don't let the novelty wear off. Serve more needs by producing more programming, more responsive to those needs. Programming not for the sake of programming, but even more of the same responsible programming we've all seen this past year. With that, Terry, there's one word I'd like to say, or two words that I'd like to say to you, and that is, Fort Wayne Cablevision thanks you, as well as our subscribers, I think, thank you for being the forerunner of access programming in the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
I just want to say thank you, John, and the only thing is now I'm going to have to wash both hands.
You know, the people who have been following Theater for Ideas for, my God, probably at least half a dozen years can remember the old days where it was practically sending smoke signals with half-inch tape and incredibly crude, but really kind of exciting circumstances. And those of us who have been watching it over this last year, this is our 52nd program, been very, very excited about the fact that TFI, electronically speaking, really is in the 20th century, that we have the equipment provided by both Fort Wayne Cablevision and the Allen County Public Library. And without the commitment from the library, quite frankly, Theater for Ideas at its present level wouldn't have been possible. And certainly one of the prime movers behind the entire Access Studio telecommunications center that we have here is Dr. Rick Ashton, who has given not only the use of this studio here at the Allen County Public Library to Theater for Ideas, but has also gone out of his way to provide office space and other kinds of support, all those things that are necessary for making a program possible. Rick, why don't you take your shot at Terry?
John, when you said this room's starting to show the wear and tear, Angela Holderman, who's sitting behind you, who is the chief of housekeeping for the library, bristled markedly. So if you don't think it looks good, she's got a little argument with you right here. Well, I have a different role here tonight as a representative of a library that knows how to find things out, has a lot of research collections and a lot of clippings and newspapers and lots of historical material and very capable people on the staff to bring it out. And so I have taken great advantage of that opportunity in the library to find out some things about the history of Terry Doran and Theater for Ideas, which I want to share with you because they are probably not all well-known facts. Mr. Doran came on the scene in Fort Wayne in 1941. He cried a lot as a baby. His mother said she loved him so she wouldn't change that for anything. His father said if you'd change him, maybe he wouldn't cry so much. Well, after that phase, he went off to Trinity Lutheran School, a venerable institution of learning in Fort Wayne, and very soon became the teacher's pet. She couldn't afford a dog. One day the teacher said, "Terry, you're one of my brightest students. You have a ready wit. Let me know when it's ready." From Trinity Lutheran, he went on to Concordia Senior High School, from which he was sent forth into the world in 1959. After participating on the track team, the cross-country team, and the baseball team. I don't know if he was trying to get away all during that time or not, but the yearbook for '59 says he was a regular swell guy. Oh, no. and his picture looked a little swollen too, actually. He passed through 4 or more years in Bloomington at IU, relatively unscathed, and then back into the big world of ideas and education all over the state of Indiana. He found out early on that some schools don't allow the kids to smoke in the teacher's lounge, and so he thought he would get all the folks together and just have a folk school instead of a school where they didn't smoke in the teacher's lounge. Well, you folks know more about the folk school than I do, and it had every kind of course in its brief and lamented history, and managed to combine natural nutrition, cross-country skiing, and pottery in the same evenings occasionally. From the folk school, he went on to Theater for Ideas, which has been around for nearly a decade now, and produced some immortal underground television and discussion in those years. Probably the high point was a verbal version of the Freaks versus the Fuzz football game over the question of the legalization of marijuana at New Haven High School, featuring Sheriff Meeks and some others. That was probably the high point of Theater for Ideas before it got to the library. The low part was probably a couple of summers ago when Theater for Ideas ended up in a tent on the landing during the Three Rivers Festival. It was the tent with no beer and no people in it. Finally, over the last couple of years, we were trying to build this building, and Terry would call about once a month and say, "Did you get it finished yet? I want to have a TV show there." And we kept saying, "Well, maybe next week. You know, you've all had repairmen and plumbers and so on." And Terry would have had 52 weeks to do 52 shows if we had gone a little more rapidly, but by the time it got down to it, he had 39 weeks to do 52 shows, and that's why he looks so worn, so pale, that he has worked so hard. In fact, and during this year here at the library, there have been some really unique shows come out of Theater for Ideas. As one staff member asked another not too long ago, "Have you seen the last Theater for Ideas show?" And the other one answered, "I hope so." But there were really some good ones. There was the one that featured a discussion of libraries among 4 people. This was the first local television show that was required to have its own yawn track. And then there was a show in which the star was naked the entire time, Garfield the cat. Well, Terry, from here, I don't know where you move on. Very few people know also that Terry has a second career that's going on right now. In addition to being the keeper of the underground office space at the library, Terry is also a library employee. He is the Sunday afternoon security guard. We had wondered why the Fort Wayne Audubon Society had begun scheduling meetings in this room on a Sunday afternoon each month, until we realized that there was a strange bird here that they were watching. Well, I don't know where we go on from here, Terry. Maybe it's to keeping the Gestapo out of junkyards or other things like that. But I'm glad that Theater for Ideas has been here. I wish you and Theater for Ideas well, both personally and for the community. And while we're talking, before we close, we mustn't forget the other half of the staff of Theater for Ideas, Kathy Curtis. Remember, when Terry asked her to be on the staff of Theater for Ideas, she said, "Okay, I'll go to the theater with you, but don't get any ideas."
Thank you, Rick. I just wanted to ask a question or clarify one of the things you said. An immortal program, or was it an immoral program in the underground? And secondly, the program in New Haven on marijuana that you mentioned, it was one of our high points.
This is the 52nd program of Theater for Ideas. Our next guest is really an absolute must in any Theater for Ideas show. Those of you who have hung around the Indiana Committee for the Humanities, as I have, quickly realized that you must have a humanist in every single program, otherwise you can't learn anything. And Terry has dutifully come up with, at least on every occasion, an academic speaking, handing out paper, serving coffee, just something to enlighten those of us who are always in the dark. One of my favorite humanists, and I think a real supporter of Theater for Ideas, is Janet Roncelli, who is a communications professor out at IU Purdue. Janet?
Now I know why Terry asked me to help him out in the program. When I think of Terry Doran, I think of a number of things, but most of all I think of money. Now, to know Terry Doran, just to look at Terry Doran, you would know that the one thing he doesn't have is money. But he has the ability to persuade others to give him money. That is, money to fund his ideas. And that's how Terry and I met. We both approached the same organization for monetary support for our creative programs. Terry got the money, and I got Terry. Now, although the organization rejected my project, they told me that I might have something in common with a gentleman named Terry Doran. Well, when we finally met, I wondered, what does this cap and corduroy jacketed male have that I didn't? Well, what did he have? Despite the fact that during his first show he alluded to himself as the answer to the Hulk, Terry's massive muscles are not what state agencies and business organizations are willing to pay money for. What is it that makes Terry attractive to funding agencies? Well, I'd like to tell you. I think it's Theater for Ideas. It's a creative program for live discussions and performances that, under his direction and his persistence, have come into existence here in Fort Wayne. I, too, was impressed when I met Terry Doran, not by his hulkish build, but by his program. Plus, my project received funding from other channels, and so I forgave Terry and we joined forces, creative forces, that is, on 3 programs. And I'll never forgive Terry for that first program when he forgot to tell me to dress properly. There I was, surrounded by 3 men on a panel on the first program, Rock and Roll, Friend or Foe, and I felt practically naked. Well, almost. I was the only panel member who didn't have a Bible. That went over like You need one humanist on every program. I guess I should have taken Terry seriously when he told me it would be a religious experience. Well, we'll forget that. After that program, how could I refuse to work with Terry and other opportunities? And 2 other programs followed, which were directed by a very creative graduate student at Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne, Mary Brandt. And those were The Poetry of Wilfred Owen and Galileo and the 20th Century Scientist, which were 2 artistic endeavors made possible by several dedicated members of the community, several dedicated members of the Performing Arts Center, and many undergraduate students from the Indiana Purdue Forensic League. And so as I look back now, Terry, I've come to the conclusion that Theater for Ideas has come to a close too soon. Why, I haven't even tired of seeing Terry wear his tie and tennis shoes, and he's yet to be nominated for the best award for the 10 best combinations of tie, tennis shoes, and cords. Why I think it's come to a close too soon is because I think the potential for this program is in its infancy. I think Theater for Ideas has only scratched the surface on the many topics of interest to the Fort Wayne community. More importantly, Theater for Ideas has given the people of Fort Wayne an opportunity to discuss, to perform, to challenge, and to create new ideas for a new tomorrow. And I think the significance of his work is reflected by the fine reputation of his funding sources, the Indiana Committee for the Humanities and Fort Wayne Cablevision. And so tonight, although I've roasted you, only medium rare, I'd like to end by toasting you and I think your innovative efforts for the Fort Wayne community as well as for citizens' access channels across the country. And as I understand it, Theater for Ideas is the hottest fall program for citizens' access channels as far west as Arizona. And so, Terry, not to leave you in a serious mood, I'd like you to stand up. It's not what you think. I would like to toast you, Terry.
My life seems to be crumbling right in my very hand.
Your right hand is a better effect.
Janet, thank you. I'm just, I'm kind of crushed that it wasn't my muscles that drew me to you.
Over the years, Theater for Ideas has had a lot of real ups and downs, and there have been people who have taken pot shots at it and people who have really defended it. But I don't think that anyone in this community has spoken up as loudly and as clearly and as forcefully with a single, solitary, beautiful voice for Theater for Ideas as has his friend Stephen Rydell, actor, mime, and really a longtime supporter of Theater for Ideas. I understand Stephen is going to present a very favorite poem for Terry. Stephen?
Eloquent as ever, Stephen. Thank you.
For those of you who've been following the program, that was intended. The audio did not go out as it has in the past. Our next guest is actually a fellow I just met this evening. And his business is bloodletting, something that goes on fairly regularly here on Theater for Ideas, but he sort of does it for a living, an interesting profession. I'd like to introduce to you Michael Allen Snyder, who is the Public Affairs Director for the American Red Cross and a board member of Theater for Ideas, or someone who keeps Terry honest.
Actually, I had a speech prepared, but Stephen said everything that I had planned to say earlier, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of improvising. You've heard some people say some pretty awful things about Terry. Most of them true, of course. But I'm going to tell you something about Terry that very few people know. Terry, the one over here to my left, it'd be to your right on the television screen. You don't want to get him confused with Mark Rosine. Terry's always had this burning ambition, you might call it a secret desire, to do a show with one person that he's never interviewed before. Most fascinating individual he's ever known in his entire life, which has been pretty long. The only problem is, Terry figures that he's the only interviewer perceptive enough to capture the true essence of this individual. And whoever heard of someone interviewing himself for a whole hour? Actually, there was one other person. Terry did consider letting another person interview him for what he saw as the ultimate TFI, a one-hour special devoted to the life and times of Terence G. Doran, humanist extraordinaire. He still can't figure out why Mr. Cronkite wasn't interested. I mean, after all, Terry offered to pay for his gasoline all the way from New York to here, and dinner before the program at the Blue Mountain. I think what may have soured the deal was when he balked at paying for a hotel room. He figured that any journalist really interested in his craft would be more than happy to sleep on a couch in the producer's living room like all the other guests. When I was asked to say a few words on tonight's program, I got to thinking about how long I had known Terry. We actually go back to a short time after he had founded the Fort Wayne Folk School, back in the early 70s. I did a newspaper article in 1974 about Terry that explored his experiences as a high school English teacher in western Boone County. Now there's a name for you. What a school system. I wonder whether or not there was anything prophetic about that. But after Terry left the western Boone County, Indiana school system, he launched the Fort Wayne Folk School and Theater for Ideas. I was there when Terry and Rick DeBolt and Lynn Willer and a lot of still familiar faces were producing programs in the art school auditorium and church basements. I was there when Terry and Rick DeBolt and Lynn Willer and a lot of other still familiar faces were being kicked out of the art school auditorium and church basements. But no matter what kind of obstacles they ran into, Terry kept on going. When the money from one grant ran out, he wrote a proposal for another one. And I don't want you to get the idea that he always got the money he asked for. In fact, there was a period of time there when he was hearing the word no so often, he started having nightmares that he was back in high school, asking his dad for the keys to the car, or asking the head cheerleader for a date to the junior prom. But through it all, Terry prevailed. Thanks to him, Fort Wayne area residents have some of the most thought-provoking programs being presented anywhere in the country. Now, not everyone gets excited about such things. In fact, the last time I looked at the ratings, I think Theater for Ideas was right down there with the Tuesday night city council meetings and reruns of Ted Mack's Original Amateur Hour. But for those who do care about thinking, about broadening their horizons, about knowing all they can about the city and the world that they live in, Terry Doran has had an impact on this community that can't be measured by any traditional yardstick. Now, one thing that I want to mention is that without the vast expertise of director Bill Nichols, the TV program might be nothing more than a long shot of talking heads. That's what all those other programs on Channel 10 are. Without the steady hands and eyes of chief photographer Rick DeBolt and his crew, that picture might bounce around on your screen. Without the help of Pam Bierry and the staff of the Telecommunications Center, that picture would never reach your set in the first place. Without the help of Rena Boone, Lynn Willer, Steve Fortreed, and all the other volunteers who make TFI work, the programs wouldn't be the same. Without the assistant director, Kathy Curtis, Terry might never make it to the library auditorium on time. But without Terry, well, without Terry Doran, who knows, it might be twice as good.
Thank you, Michael. I think I better say that the other programs on Channel 10 are well done, too, or this one may not get out over the air, so, but thank you.
When I used to work for the Indiana Committee for the Humanities, and with all due respect, Terry was kind of the running joke that we had down there, because every funding deadline, I mean, it was Greenwich Mean Time, you know, in would come Terry with a proposal. And we used to think that he was indeed more concerned about submitting a proposal than, in fact, what the proposal was really about. And he reached, in terms of a granting agency, an all-time high when he came in with an $800 proposal, a humanities proposal, philosophy, history, human values, on the winter of 1978. That was the program. He was doing a humanities program about how he and others had survived the winter of '78. We gave him the grant, not on any basis of what he said in there, not because he had the 14 humanists as we dutifully required, but we couldn't believe that anybody was actually going to pull off a humanities program on the winter of '78. And I guess what I'm saying is I'm pleased that ICH stuck by Terry, and there's one person who's stuck by Terry really a lot longer than others, and that's John Bonsett. John's been putting Terry Doran shows on the cable even before they invented subscribers. We've always wondered a little bit about the audience that they had, but boy, John was putting them on, and so John's here tonight. He's the president of Citizens Cable of Allen County. John?
Thank you. I feel a little like the clown that gets left to sweep up the light. Terry, Kathy's splendid production tonight, I think, proves beyond any doubt that your hosting is a many-splendored thing. Most hosts on national television, I feel, are caricatures of what they see in the looking glass of their public, what they hope that public might want to hear from them. And most of them are very careful about what they'll undertake on their shows. Try to get certain subjects on a Johnny Carson show, and you very quickly get it turned down, even if it's a great idea. But here, anything goes. And Terry, it's been a great experience since, I think it's 1973. I went back through some of the archives, and we still do have some of the tapes, and they don't play very easily. They're creaky and groaning with age. But I had hoped actually to bring the New Haven Grass Fire tape with me tonight, but I learned that I couldn't put it on at the same time that we were on television, or Cablevision. And so I left the sheriff and his prisoner behind. Terry's one of the few people that ever sat Sheriff Meeks down beside an ex-convict and made him like it. I think it's a marvelous thing, actually. Terry is perhaps the most conservative man I know that embroiders his own shirts. He's, over these last 10 years or so, we've had many a great conversation about how Theater for Ideas was going to continue. And Terry, as he is doing right now in the newspapers, would throw out the word, "We're done, we're finished." But tell me, how many television producers that you know in 39 weeks have ever produced 52 shows? Most of them do 26 and then repeat, repeat, repeat. Terry, congratulations for a great job done during this year. I think it is a marvelous record of achievement. Terry's conservative, he's strong, he's Reed-like. And as I tried to put that together, I thought of marsh grass on the ocean. Terry has rooted himself, and like that marsh grass, he can take the wind and the surf and the storms, and he always comes back. He always comes back with the humanities as his sponsor and some other friend. He's got the